This week, we're looking at something new from Disney that you can't ride, you can't watch, and you can't book, but you can actually live it. Because I had the rare opportunity and privilege to visit Cotino, the first story living by Disney community in Rancho Mirage, California, not far from where Walt used to escape with his family to Smoke Tree Ranch for some quiet, a little bit of sun, and maybe even some big ideas. And Cotino is really Disney's next chapter in placemaking, not just building theme parks or resorts, but building a place that people can actually call home. Because it's part private club, part community, part storytelling experiment, I think, with a 24-acre turquoise lagoon right in the middle of the desert. It is a place that mid-century modern meets a little bit of Disney Imagineering for building a place that you can actually go and stay and live in. And today, I'm joined by someone who was with me at Cotino. He is Mr. Daps from MrDaps.com, and we're going to talk about what we saw, what we felt, maybe how it ties back to Walt and his ideas for Epcot, and what this might mean for the future of how Disney tells stories that we live in. Mr. Daps, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
You might remember Mr. Daps from such shows as, I don't even remember what show. We've done shows together. We talked about
foods at Disneyland, I believe, after the opening of Tiana's.
That's it. Because Disneyland is really where you've called home for as long as you've been doing this, which is a very, very long time.
21 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's So I don't want to say that we're the old timers in the room. We're the only ones in the room, but we are the old timers in the room.
You know, there is that point at media events where you do become the old timer, and I think we passed that point several years ago.
So before we dive in, and there's a lot really I think to cover about Cotino, I want to give our friend who's sitting at this table virtually with us listening sort of a clear picture of Cotino, like where it is, I think what it is, and what it feels like, right? So geographically, it's located in Rancho Mirage, California, in Coachella Valley, about 30 minutes from Palm Springs. And this is the first of what we know of to be two, and probably more, community under the Storyliving by Disney brand, which was announced back in 2022, which is a completely new business model for Disney, where they partner with developers to create these master planned and Disney curated residential communities. This one is even bigger than I thought it was. This is going to be about 1,900 plus homes over about 618 acres. We'll talk about the different types of homes. There'll also be a dedicated 55 and over neighborhood. There's also going to be retail and public spaces and access to the bay when it opens in just a couple years. So let's go back, Mr. Daps, and tell me, what was your first initial thought when you heard about this announcement of what Cotino was?
So when they first announced it, it's actually funny because my brain immediately went to, oh, this is take two on like Celebration or something of that type. And then ironically enough, I had scheduled already a visit to Rancho Mirage to visit a friend at another complex that turns out to be right across the street. So when we were driving in on the bus the other day, we had I think it was a Marriott complex on the right, and then Storyliving is on the left. And that Marriott complex I was at literally a week or two after the announcement. And it was amazing because I think it changed my perspective on the whole thing, because when I was thinking about this, was it 3 years ago? One, my first look at that space was like, oh, that doesn't look very big. Obviously, it looks very different now. The other thing that I was very aware of is I'm like, oh, this is right in the middle of Rancho Mirage. And I was like, Disney kind of always has that, you're in the Disney bubble. We are controlling and protecting and adding extra magic to your space. And I was wondering, how would that actually play out? Because it felt like, as you were standing on the corner where we turned into the place, I was like, this feels like we're right in the middle of everything. And those fears were blown out of the water as well, or maybe into the Cotino Bay, I don't know. And so the initial thought process was, one, is there enough room to really make this a Disney experience that's completely unique and set apart from everything else in the area. Two, it made sense because I'm like, well, they have other different living complexes like that in the area, so it's not a huge jump to be like, oh, we could put another one in here. And then the connection for Disney with Walt Disney and going down there years ago, I liked, but I also was curious how that would play out, since he always seemed like he was in a more open area with space and mountains. And I was like, will that really be what it feels like once they've opened it? And thankfully, I can say, yes, it does. Like, the mountains were gorgeous from just about everywhere we were at there.
Yeah, I had never been to this part of California before. So all this was very, very new to me. And when I first got out there, I was like, wow, everything's very brown. Like, they really like brown at it. But I came to sort of learn that this was, Palm Springs was sort of where the Hollywood elite would go to vacation, because the studios made them not be more than 2 hours away from the studios themselves. So this ended up being this sort of oasis in the middle of the desert. I had no idea what to expect when I got there. And, the more I learned, the more I was like, oh, I understand this is also a big golf community. It's a big residential community. It's a big vacation community. Paint the picture for me of, I think we sort of had these ideas of what Cotino was going to look like from concept art and what we had heard. What was your sort of reaction when you first arrived? Now, to be clear, it's very much in its very, very early stages, right? Of all the 1900 homes, I think there's 30, 40 that have
was
actually
like a couple dozen, it seemed like.
Yeah. So tell me about your first reaction when you saw Cotino from the inside versus seeing it from the street. Like, did it feel Disney, or did it feel like and I mean this in a good way, the rest of Palm Springs in terms of this mid-century luxury first and then a little bit of Disney second?
So my first thought, I'm going to say both, to be completely honest, is there's definitely a Disney feel as you're going into Cotino, because you pass this little park area where you can, I think it was a dog park maybe, but they have these very beautifully curated desert parks, and they've got the walkway and they've got the little art fixtures and benches that feel very Disney. Stylistically different, because we don't really have a desert park at this point. But it definitely had that, like, oh yeah, this is a step up from what we would see in Orange County in a park, or even just walking around in Rancho Mirage. Then you get into the houses, and the houses, I almost felt like we were stepping into a movie set. Because it definitely was like, there's definite intention here in planning. And even I think it was the first house we were at, which had houses around it, and noticing the sight lines to I guess it would have been, I think, South Mountains. Like, there were already houses around that part, but you could see through, and you still had, from the backyard, they lined up the houses just right that if you were standing in the backyard by the pool, you could see the mountains. And I was like, okay, so that's a Disney thing. Like, they've thought through, where is the second floor of this house not going to block all of the mountains for the house next to it? And they've done that down the block, which I think is rather impressive. And just the style of the houses and the thought process of, like, one of the house builders we were talking to, they really wanted to hide the garage. And so the garage was back around behind the house, not on the main street, just to create that different feel as you were coming in, and kind of elevate the experience, which is very a Disney thing. And then as you go further back into Cotino, because you go into the houses and the parks first, and then kind of in the center of the whole thing is Cotino Bay. That was where I felt like they went from slightly Disney to, like, all right, this is where we're really going all in on it. Because where else do you find this beautiful bay, lake, pool, whatever you want to call it, in the middle of the desert that looks so refreshing? And it looks kind of like what I think of the cartoons when they used to be out in the desert and they'd have the mirage in the distance. Like, that was kind of my first thought, was like, oh, this could easily be one of those mirages. And I hate to go Bugs Bunny on you right now, but I can totally imagine them just charging it, diving, and then landing in the sand. But as several of our party can attest, the water was real. They put their fingers in. And but there really is this oasis in the middle of the desert that's surrounded by mountains, and it totally feels like it could have come out of a Disney movie. And as you're looking around and you did the same thing, I'm sure. We kind of just look around and take it all in. Yes, you have all of these houses that in lots that will be filled at some point as people purchase and create what they want for their houses. But then beyond that, instead of seeing the city, you saw trees and you saw the mountains. And yes, there's an occasional light and an occasional building, but it didn't feel like we were right in the middle of Rancho Mirage. Like, I was really impressed with that as I was looking around, and overall, I walked away going like, this really did feel like it was Disney. Maybe not a Disney park or a Disney cruise or a Disney hotel, but you can tell the DNA has been interwoven into all of the experiences, especially the experiences. And as we were going through the weekend and we kept looking at these things, three words kept popping up in what people said, and then also just in my brain, is they really focused on creation, inspiration, and collaboration. And that was not just in the building of this living or community, but it continues on as people move in, whether it's with the programming, with the dining. Like, we heard it repeatedly that there is a process of creation and inspiring people and then collaborating, not just with the people that work there, but also the people that live there.
Yeah, and to your point, you said it felt like it came out of a Disney movie, and it's not because you see castles and characters. Quite the opposite. There is a lack of those, which is very intentional. So the fact that you and I think a lot of us who were there got that same feeling. I think there was this wonderful. It was a combination of feeling like a neighborhood, but also feeling like a private Disney resort all at the same time, but without it being sort of overtly Disney. And it made me think, like, over and over again, it made me think about connecting this on many levels, not just geographically, but even emotionally, to Walt's own story, right? He had a home at Smoke Tree Ranch in the Palm Springs area. This was his escape. This is where he went to think, and sold his house there to help finance Disneyland. He bought it back later on and built a bigger home. And even the name Cotino is a linguistic nod to smoke tree. It's Latin for the smoke tree, which is Contitus, which is a plant that's very common. So I love that it is, like many things that are there, it is a subtle, quiet hat tip to Walt and his connection to the region. And and I'm sure this is going to come up over and over again. While there is no Mickey Mouse everywhere. It is not overtly Disney or Disney parks, but there are these subtle connections, sometimes little wonderful Easter eggs that tie to Disney in the park. So, for example, like Long Table Park is directly connected to Walt and Lillian's tradition of holding these long table dinners in the desert, these big outdoor communal tables where people would gather around to eat and talk, and I'm sure plan a little bit together. And I think that's absolutely what it is, what's happening there. And even when you go into, for example, and we'll talk more about the Artisan Club, but like when you walk into that lobby there, you'll see that there are these rotating exhibits that are curated from the Walt Disney Archives that showcase Walt and his presence in the desert. There was pictures of Walt in local events. He's got his old straw hat that I'm sure we've all seen pictures of him. And I think the goal very clearly is to connect the residents and the members emotionally to Walt's personal history, not specifically not Disney's IP.
Oh, absolutely. And I think on top of that is connect not just with Walt, but also connect with each other while you're connecting with Walt. Because you saw everywhere there was great intention put to creating community spaces where people could either intentionally or unintentionally bump into each other and basically just build that community. Like, it's very interesting to see Disney intentionally working to build a community environment from so many different ways that only Disney can do. You and I spend a bulk of our time building community and in getting to invest in people, and I think that's one of the most rewarding parts of what we do. And we can do that. We can do that in person. We can do it virtually, but we're not going to go out and build houses, and we're not going to go build out a park and in a giant swimming pool. And it was fascinating as we walked around to notice how even like chairs on the beach were set up, and all of these places that fire pits all over the place where you could just go, and maybe it's hanging out with your friends that you intended to hang out with, or maybe, as we did several times, we'd end up with different people in our group just because there was an open chair and people naturally felt like, hey, let's have a seat and be involved in the community. And that's reinforced with the pictures you see of Walt being a part of the community. And we even heard how, I think it was the opening ceremony where we heard about how they really worked with Rancho Mirage to make sure that Storyliving in Cotino was a part of the Rancho Mirage community, as opposed to solely being an exclusive community that is kind of put off in its own and could potentially alienate the local community. And clearly they made every effort to do the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think, we heard a lot from a number of different people about how not just Walt spent time there, but he drew inspiration from this area. And I feel like Cotino is very much a continuation of that, and is very respectful of Walt's legacy in that it's very subtle, right? If you sort of know where to look, it's clearly there. But I think this idea of connect, celebrate, and create very much are in alignment with Walt's value and his emphasis on community and belonging, not just when you go into his parks, but this idea of everyday experiences. And I think that, not that we can sort of speak for Walt, but I think, if he were to go there, he might be like, this is it. This is sort of the vision that I had for what building a community where people could come together and celebrate and create what was what his sort of vision originally was.
And the environment around there is conducive to it as well, because there was multiple times where you'd be sitting somewhere or standing somewhere, and I couldn't help but think, oh, this is why Walt loved this area so much. And you'd look at the sunset on the mountains, or some people got up really early and saw the sunrise on the mountains. And they really do look like they're straight out of a painting or something. And as I'm speaking about this, I'm almost thinking of, there's almost a Grand Canyon feel to it, like the colors, and especially during the sun rising and setting, like they were so vibrant and beautiful. And I really wished I'd brought my nice camera instead of my quick one, because I was just like, it's so gorgeous. The mountains and the something about the air and the palm trees. And I was like, I could really understand why Walt Disney would want to come down here, one, to disconnect, because it is really quiet, but two, just to soak in nature and be inspired by it.
Yeah, and I had a chance to have a conversation with Claire Bilby, who is the Senior Vice President of Disney Signature Experiences. And this is the connection to Walt is something that I kept bringing up a lot because I thought it was so important. I want to play a little bit of my conversation with Claire here just for some context. This is my very first look. It's all of our first look at Cotino, the very first Storyliving by Disney experience and community. And coming out here to Palm Springs, Palm Desert, I immediately thought about Walt, right? I thought about the connection to Walt. He spent so much time out here and Smoke Tree Ranch. How does the connection to Walt and his connection to this place, how does this sort of inspire what you've built here at Cotino?
Well, you're absolutely right. Walt loved it. This was his getaway. He would talk about it as his happy place. And really, he got a lot of creative inspiration coming out here. And he would bring his animators, he would bring Imagineers out here. So when we look at what the Coachella Valley represents from even the Walt days to now, creativity is such an important part of the culture here. So what we really did is when we started designing Cotino, we really took the bias of this is a creative oasis. And so when we work with our builders, that's very much creative in the sense it's an indoor-outdoor living. when we did here with the Artisan Club, which is what we're opening right now for our members. It's really how do we bring that creative oasis here to life for our members.
And Walt was all about, obviously, storytelling and innovation and community. I sort of imagine Cotino as an extension of that same kind of legacy and vision that he had for even, Epcot when it was supposed to be the city.
We really, Storyliving came out of life as we just kept watching these branded lifestyle communities becoming more and more popular. And to your point, how Walt was so, wanted that belonging, wanted that sense of community. And we thought, with our Disney cast members and Disney service, what a great way to create a community around that aspect. It's different than a theme park, though, because obviously you want to be fully immersed to Disney there. Here, you live here 365 days a year. So you've got to really, they don't want to live in a theme park. So how do you give them those Disney touches, which certainly the cast members is number one, but also just little programming nods, how we can bring folks to here. So imagine how we could bring Disney chefs here to teach you your favorite Disney recipes, or how they talk about healthy living. Or we bring in authors or Imagineers that can come and talk about the latest things that are going on or latest books. So it's how we blend those things and really talk as you get to know your members more and what their interests are, cater to those as well.
Right, because I immediately get the sense this is not about just selling you a plot of land, selling you this. No. Connect, create, and celebrate very much feels that it's in alignment with Walt's vision and his legacy.
Yes, absolutely. And really, when we were looking at these brand new communities, they're very much, this is something that's very much the Gen X and the baby boomers. Of course, the baby boomers are the last group that grew up with Walt. And then you've got the Gen X, which I call kind of the new Disney when we relaunched everything. And so they love what that product is. But they also want, as I said, they want to connect with people that they can get to know. So a lot of them are really looking for those communities that they can make new friendships. Kids are probably out of the house. They want a cool place for the grandkids to come visit. And those are things that are all natural in my mind that we can provide.
And it seems that Cotino is, again, evoking Walt, creating this sense of community and belonging, right?
Right.
And talk to me about this idea of fostering a sense of community. More importantly, this idea of living our own story.
Yes. So what we want to do is, I said, when you talk to a lot of folks when they talk about wanting to come here, they all have different interests. Some want, as I said, some it's all about health and wellness. Some about enrichment. Some of it is about, I want to learn how to paint. I want to do different things. So what we are trying to do is how do we talk to the members and come up with what programs the majority of them want to do. And then that's going to give them a commonality of the first. Okay, I'm going to go learn how to paint, or I'm going to go learn how to, do yoga classes or whatever, and how we create those things. And we also are going to be a facilitator of sorts. They want to do book clubs or they want to do different things, how we help do that. So our goal is really to bring them in and help that facilitate those members, those belongings, those friendships, and really let them define what their next chapter is. This is not about us defining that for them. It's about them doing it and us enabling it.
Right, because when you attach the Disney name to something like this, there are multiple, sometimes unrealistic, but multiple levels of expectation of what that's supposed to be. And as we were coming in this morning and I saw the Storyliving by Disney community, what do you want a resident to feel, or what do you want somebody to feel when somebody says, I live in a Disney community, I live in the Cotino community? What do you want that to evoke in terms of a resident and as they sort of describe what this experience is like for them?
I want them to say that they living in a community that they really belong. That's my headline to them is, this is where I belong. I have made great friends. I get to pursue my passions of this. This is not about Mickey Mouse running around. It's really about what I want and meeting people that I have, same and different interests, and that we become good friends. We're going to be probably 50-50 here, meaning full-time and second homes. And so it's how do we blend those and do that? And a lot of it, I think the second homes will ultimately become permanent homes as they transition as well. So I think it's really that aspect of it, is that they belong and it's very welcoming here. That's what I want the most, and that they feel like they know their neighbors.
And I get a sense that, and who knows, time will obviously tell, that Cotino and Storyliving by Disney as a brand is going to attract, I'm raising my hand, Disney fans who just want to continue their story and be surrounded by like-minded people who understand what the Disney brand is going to bring. And then other folks who just want an elevated type of
Yes.
community experience who also understand what
Right.
having Disney's name means. How do you sort of reconcile and align the two of those and satisfy the folks who maybe don't want Mickey Mouse running around, but want
Right.
to sort of feel, and obviously we're in a room, again, where there's concept art everywhere. How do you sort of align and reconcile those two?
Great question. And it is something that continues to evolve. Because what I would say, again, when you talk about Storyliving by Disney, what is important is, yeah, we have the Walt connection, but we have the Coachella connection. So if somebody's moving here, they also like the Coachella Valley. And while we do have some artwork that are the from the Disney archives, you also will see a lot that you wouldn't know it was Disney if you didn't actually know all the history. So we always talk about welcoming to everyone. And we will say that we believe that Disney brand to people does mean very friendly cast, great service, safety, and those are unanimous whether you're a huge fan or not. And that's what people are looking for. And who knows, some people that may not be a big Disney fan becomes one, meeting all of our other Disney fans as they get to know each other from that perspective. So that's where I would say we will ebb and flow with them, and that's why we will always have programming that's not just Disney. It's going to be also, just as I said, like fitness. If you just want to go have a great workout, you can do that. So.
Yeah, this is not a body built on great workouts.
No.
But from a 30,000 foot view, Storyliving by Disney also seems like and I think this is an important milestone moment that history will look back on today as being, because this is a really sort of a brand new business model for Disney, sort of going into this type of environment. How do you see this continuing? And I know it's really day one, but how do you see the not just short but long-term vision of what storytelling by Disney is going to continue to evolve into?
Well, I mean, our hope is that it's going to evolve to several communities. Obviously, right now we have this one here, and we've announced the one in Raleigh. And what's so great about Disney is we learn so much with each new project that we apply those learnings to the next one. And I do think that these are going to be wildly popular. And as somebody said to me earlier, we're going to be in 10 years. This will be full. We have over 1,900 residents. We've got 4,000 in Raleigh, and who knows where we'll go next.
And I took a look at the plot map of sort of what the next few phases are, not just in terms of the evolution of building of homes, but there's going to be condos, there's going to be a hotel. How does that fit into the evolution of what this particular storytelling community is going to be?
Yeah, this one is interesting because it is really all surrounding the Cotino Bay. So in the case of, we do have 3 phases of homes. And again, part of that also is ebbing and flowing with what the demand is, what homes people want. And yes, there are future plans for condos, and we'll see what is the demand in the residential market. That's what's so great, why you don't build everything out at once, is that you can adapt to what you learn on from that perspective. The folks that own the land here, they do have a plot to go get a resort hotel. So that is going to be a 4-star or more. And so when they get that, that'll be great. And that'll be another activation on the lagoon. And then obviously there's additional space in addition to the 45,000 square feet that Disney has, that they could do some other retail dining. And it's very much a great co-collaboration so that it really just enhances everybody's experience.
When I learned that, I started to envision this a little bit differently as, yes, to a certain degree, it is a residential community, but it's also going to really, I think, evolve into a destination and is going to put this area on the map for people who might not have thought of coming here otherwise, or when they saw there was a residential community, didn't think that they could enjoy everything that Cotino has to offer.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that's what also excites Rancho Mirage, the city, so much. So.
Yeah, this is my first time here in this part of California, and I see why people flock here. I see why Walt came here, and it was so important to him. So many.
Well, and I have to say, it's remiss of me that I haven't mentioned. I mean, just the mountains that surround us, and I have to say, as beautiful as they are now in the wintertime when you got snow covered tops, it's spectacular. It's just spectacular. So it really is. We are in paradise. So.
Yeah, and again, I keep coming back to Walt because I really do think this is the realization of some of his early dreams. If you were to walk with Walt through Cotino today, what moment or detail do you think you'd be like, this is exactly what I had in mind?
Oh, well, it's very hard to ever predict what Walt would want. He's so special. But I think...
what do you think would make him smile the most?
I think he would smile about how we have created such a connected environment here. and about how we have created this artisan club for, gatherings, because that was always very important to him at Smoke Tree Ranch, is how we did that. We did a nod, by the way, over at the Long Table Park, which is our 55 plus. Walt would always have a long table that he would have all the residents come out and do pancake breakfast or whatever. And we literally mimicked that over there because we knew what Walt was always wanting to do everywhere was the connectivity. And I think that's what he would be the most proud of, is that we're keeping that legacy of his alive.
I imagine that his idea of creating a true community, and I think it's not just about the incredible view, but it really is about the vision.
It is, and it's and getting to be close with other people. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Claire, thank you so very much.
Thank you very
Congratulations.
much. Thank you. It's great talking to you. I appreciate it.
And so again, I think Walt dreamt of creating places where storytelling and innovation and community and creativity very much come together. And I think this is part of a relatively long line of Disney attempting to embrace and maybe help shape how and where people live, right? Because Epcot was originally conceived, as we know, as by Walt as this experimental prototype community of tomorrow, not a theme park, but where people would come together to live in this very optimistically designed, very constantly evolving city of the future. Celebration opened in the 90s near Walt Disney World, where Disney sort of acted like that city planner, right, and developer. They wanted this to be a place with walkable streets and this very sort of new urbanism designs and the schools and a hospital, and going back to the idea of having a true physical town square, right? And I think while Disney may have stepped back from the day-to-day governance, I think they learned a lot from there about, one, how complex it is to run a town, but what worked and what didn't work. And I know when this was announced, and a lot of conversations are happening now, is how does this compare and contrast to Golden Oak, right, which exists in Walt Disney World proper, with homes that are in even a much higher price point of, I think they're now in the $5 to $20 million range. They must have really, really good podcasts.
Yeah, no problem.
Like Cotino, it is gated, it is exclusive, but it's really more about the proximity to being to Walt Disney World. I think Cotino is not necessarily the next step. I think it's a bit of a pivot, right? Because instead of Disney trying to run a town or just sell prestige high-end homes and real estate near the parks, Cotino is really about curating lifestyle, and that is not just in the homes that they built, but in the programming and the story, and I think the community identity that they are trying to build here.
Absolutely, and it was interesting to me, like you see in the press releases and the posts online, that yes, there has a wellness component of this, and when we actually went through the whole week or the 2 days. I keep wanting to call it a weekend, but who knows? But it really was interesting at how much of an investment that Disney, and I think they partnered with Optum, to really create an environment where it's not just the physical that they're addressing. It's also they have help with, yes, wellness from a working out standpoint, and there's a bunch of different things you can do. And then they have the they had financial wellness they'll help with, and mental wellness. Like, it was very interesting, all of the different investments they're making to help with all of that. And I don't know that I expected that from what you read and what you see. And that is not something that necessarily I feel like has been an approach before, other than maybe some of the things on the cruise line that you're not going to see in Golden Oak or Celebration. And it's an interesting, I think you're right, it's a pivot of where they're focusing, and it's really about creating, I almost want to just say, health in a holistic way of giving you a place that's where you can live in a healthy environment, where you can work on your own health, whatever that looks like. And then they're going to support you as you do that, while also collaborating with you so that you can do it in a better way for what's good for you as the resident at Cotino. And that was really I don't know. That was kind of something that I didn't expect to walk out of that experience thinking about, because it's not something that's really on the forefront when you go to a Disney hotel. And yes, they have things for you when you go on a cruise, but I don't know that we've seen Disney lean that far into this before, as opposed to, coming up with the perfect utopian society. Instead of coming up with that grand Epcot plan, I feel like instead they're recognizing that these are things that we do really well, and these are things that Optum does really well. And then you could take it even further. These are things that the home builders do really well, and even bringing in the consultants with the food to collaborate with. And rather than trying to do all of it well, Disney owns the niche it's good at, and then complemented that with the things that maybe it doesn't have the same expertise for. And because of that, they're not creating an entire city. They are creating a community, which is what the focus of everything is about.
I keep sort of going back to Walt, who I felt was the master of recognizing his and the company's own strengths and surrounding yourself by the people who are the very best at what they do. I think that's what Cotino is continuing. I think Disney is setting the creative vision and the standards, which are obviously very high, and the experience layer, while the partner builders handle the homes, the restaurant people handle the food. Eventually, when not just, again, it's going to expand beyond the private residential areas, but the Lakeside Town Center with the shopping and the dining and the public areas, those will sort of be with very carefully curated partners that are going to come in and stick to that vision and stick to those standards and the layers of experiences. So I think when people are sort of talking about this in the context of Epcot the City and Celebration and Golden Oak, I think it's a very different, even sort of like emotional pitch from what they are, other than the fact that, like Golden Oaks, yes, it is luxury and it is exclusivity, but I think Cotino, I think the pivot, which is important for people to understand, is that it's more about belonging and participation than it is the luxury and exclusivity.
Oh, absolutely. And as you're saying that, it's interesting that how it builds on recent things that Disney has done through the last decade and a half or 2 decades. Like I think of the thing we had in Frontierland years ago at Disneyland that was all about interactive gamesmanship, and that eventually leads to something like the Galactic Star Cruiser, which is all about interaction and community and coming together on a common goal for whatever that is. And then you move even further forward and you maybe pivot away from both of those, but I think there's lessons learned across from the company of different things they do that, whether it's a cruise director building a week of community on a ship or people going on a mission with Chewbacca, that you recognize these are the principles that work. And when you have principles, then you can apply them somewhere else. And I think what they've done is they've reached across Disney experiences and probably beyond and said, these are principles we know that work in other parts of our company to build a community, to build engagement, to build belonging. And we can apply them in this really targeted space. And we think that we can create an environment where people are going to really embrace that, love living here, and live a fulfilling life. Because they also talk about purpose a lot in Cotino. And so that kind of connects with missions and all of these other things. And I really think it's interesting to see, like, I would love to know that, interweb of different lessons learned at different places throughout the company that they're using for, whether it's dancing to an Encanto song or learning how to cook. Like, it would be very fascinating to hear those kind of conversations and learn those lessons that they've learned that they're bringing to this community and to this focus.
And look, first impressions are everything, right? You only get that one chance to make a first impression. And when it comes to the design and the storytelling in the physical spaces, it's like we eat with our eyes first, right? It's one of the reasons why I love Japanese food. Like the visual presentation is so important because it sort of sets the expectation of what is to come. And I think, I think it's very interesting in terms of where Cotino is located in this sort of Palm Springs Valley and the aesthetic that they need to match, and how the overall sort of visual language of Cotino very much leans into that mid-century modern design. It feels very native and authentic to Palm Springs. You've got those warm woods, a lot of browns, the glass walls, the incredible indoor-outdoor transitions, and these very clean, long horizontal lines. And you talked about the mountain views. It reminded me of the quote about when Bob Iger talked about Shanghai. Like, it's authentically Disney and distinctly Palm Springs. Like, it does not feel like it's out of place, or you would look down the street and be like, oh, that's where Disney's building, because you can see, like, there are no bright, Disney like pastels. There is no castle sort of towering over somewhere as this visual weenie. Imagineering, which worked with the builders and Disney and the different other partners, very intentionally blended this regional aesthetic into Disney storytelling, but it's also very subtle as well. Like, you're not walking in and seeing big character murals and things like that. Like, it is a very mature, grown-up, lived-in storytelling.
Did you find it interesting, at least for me, there was more Disney storytelling than I was expecting, I think. Mainly in the subtle, like, hidden Mickeys and some of the direct connections that we're used to as Disney fans. And especially the second day when we were walking around the Artisan Club, where I was like, wow, this is actually more than I was expecting in a regard. Because I feel like they kind of, I don't want to say they undersold it, but they kind of undersold it of like, this is very much a separate thing. It's not going to be the theme parks. It's not going to be, Disney in your face. And it's not. But I think I took that to mean like, oh yeah, no hidden Mickeys, no nods to certain movies or whatever. And I was very pleasantly surprised that as you walk around, you are going to, let's say you're not a Disney fan, like you bring your cousin from Iowa or something over, they might walk around Cotino and be like, this is just a lovely place to live. And, oh yeah, there's the Incredibles house. That's really cool. Whereas I could bring, my buddy Johnny from Disneyland, and he'd be like, oh my gosh, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. And he's just going to, geek out about everything. And I loved how they kind of rode that fence, I guess, very effectively of, if you are really into Disney, you're probably going to love it. If you're not so into Disney, you're still very much going to love it, because it's got that environment and that that quality level that Disney brings to things. Excuse me. And I was really pleasantly surprised in that regard, and I shouldn't have been, because that's what Disney always does. But it was fascinating to see how they brought that. And I really just expected to see like Lucille Ball or Frank Sinatra walk down the street. Like,
yeah, I mean, and I didn't know what to expect. And to be perfectly transparent, I did not look at a lot of the concept art. I didn't read a lot of the materials ahead of time, because I didn't want to go with any preconceived ideas or expectations. I wanted to have the place speak to me on its own without me coming in with any sort of preconceptions or potentially misconceptions. And to your point, you're not going to walk in, like, there is no Mickey Mouse on the front entrance. There's no, I mean, you talk about hidden Mickeys. They are few and far between. Incredible subtlety is the aesthetic. There are nods, and we'll talk about some of those Easter eggs, because that's really what they are. But then you also have the Par House, right? So you also have this physical, inhabitable version of the Par's mid-century modern home from The Incredibles 2, which I have to tell you, you see it from the outside, you're like, oh, I get the reference. That's pretty cool. But when you walk in, there was a lot of things that sort of hit me all at once. One, it felt to me like this house was built in the 60s, and it was just sort of modernized just enough so that it fits in. I also felt, and I've only felt this a few other times before, that when I walked in, I got this huge, stupid smile on my face, because I felt like I walked into The Incredibles 2. The last time I felt that was when I walked into Radiator Springs. And I was like, I am standing in the middle of this Cars movie. Now, the Par House, just to be clear, is it's for members only. There is an additional membership level that we'll talk about for private events, but there are bedrooms. There are, I think there's 6 bedrooms. Like you can sleep like 16 people there. There's a kitchen that comes right out of the movie. There's a secondary kitchen, so if you want to have catered gatherings there as well. But if you go and watch that scene from The Incredibles 2, they picked it up and they put it in. It's like they 3D printed the movie, because there are those huge indoor-outdoor rockwork elements and the glass walls and this incredible, breathtaking atrium space that you walk into. And as you look around, there is newly crafted, unique, mid-century modern furniture and finishes, like that laminate cabinetry. My mother would loved it. And, the fabrics that are very bold. So it's like a lot of other things. It carries the Incredibles aesthetic without turning it into like a theme park sort of created. Stunt's the wrong word, but you're not creating
it wasn't cartoony. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It really, I think I would have loved if Disney had had a camera on when we all walked in, because I really think all of us kind of just literally got this huge, eyes popping, big smiles. And one of the things that's popping into my head too is that second level hallway thing that's kind of a floating hallway. And that view was absolutely stunning. And then you think of the TV that was very retro but brand new. And I completely agree with you that it's kind of like walking into Cars Land for the first time, where you're like, oh, they literally just picked it up out of the movie and dropped it here and somehow took it from an animated medium to this is physically where they lived. And that was probably one of my favorite spaces that we've visited in a media event in recent years, just because it was so unexpected. And I think we had, expectations of I don't know, trying to continue to weave that thread of not being too much Disney, but also infusing the story in. And in this one case, they're like, Pixar, you're right here. Like, this is it. And I could imagine I was having a blast walking around and looking at the different rooms, and you're like, oh, well, Edna sleeps here, obviously. And, and you could imagine the story continuing in this building. And there really wasn't anything identifiable that was like, oh, this is flat out The Incredibles. Like, there were lots of nods, and the calendar on the wall in the kitchen was adorable, but really it could have been any family from that era that could be thrown in there. And that's one of the things that keeps popping back into my brain as we've been gone now a week, and just how it immersed you into the story. And you could, I love anything that makes, when after the story's over, your imagination continues the story on, and you're like, well, this could have happened, and this is what happened. Like that's good storytelling on Disney and Pixar's part. And this definitely got me into like, oh, I need to go rewatch Incredibles 2. And there was nothing actually, like, we didn't see any characters. We didn't see a single, I mean, it might be the only Disney opening for something in as long as I can remember, where we didn't see Mickey Mouse. We didn't see, like, The Incredibles would have made sense there probably more than Mickey Mouse, but like, we didn't see a single Disney character when we were there. And
nobody came out to cut the ribbon, or there was no surprise and delight moment.
Yeah, and we didn't need it, because I think the surprise and delight moment was getting to walk into that house and then and just getting to spend some time in there with the people that made it come to life, and really just that view also. Yeah. Like looking through those windows at the mountains and in the bay, gorgeous.
It's like Galaxy's Edge. Follow me around. It's like Galaxy's Edge, where the word Star Wars don't exist, right? It's unlike because you might be listening and going, oh, well, it's probably like the Contemporary, where those rooms are inspired by the Incredibles. It's not. It's very different, because it's not a place that was inspired by the movie, right? To your point, every room is inspired by a different member of the Parr family or a character like Edna, but it's through the palette, it's through the textures, not literal character faces on the wall. Like, it's very subtle, it's very complementary to that mid-century architecture. And I think it's almost a caricature of it. And like you said, it's something that we get to step into as if this place was a physical manifestation of something we saw in the movie. Again, I know we had a chance to talk to some of the Imagineers about their inspiration, about some of the Easter eggs. I want to just quickly play a clip of that here.
Okay, well, this is the Par House, so welcome. The Par House is a multi-purpose event space for members of the Artisan Club. So members have the opportunity to rent this for special events, birthday parties, weddings, baby showers, as well as overnight stays. So they can actually spend the night here, which is what makes it so unique. It's not just like a multi-purpose room in a club, it's actually a home that allows guests to stay the night. So there are actually 6 bedrooms in this house.
And what's interesting about the bedrooms is we wanted to let them be inspired by the characters in the film. So we used like color nods to characters. We didn't want any overt sort of expression there. So we have like nods in colors and in custom wallpapers and in lighting fixtures, just to give a little nod to the character. So it's really exciting stuff that's upstairs, because we never really saw a lot of their bedrooms in the film Incredibles 2. But there's also a ton of Easter eggs like sprinkled throughout the house. So like, hopefully you can find some, and let us know your favorite, actually.
Yeah.
Please.
What's one that I can't miss? What's the...
We keep talking about the cereal boxes in the kitchen, but there's also a Mr. Incredible Sings framed vinyl record that is pretty exciting too.
Nice. How much did you collaborate with or take input from the folks over at Pixar? Because one thing about Disney fans, we are, meticulous about attention to detail. So this has to be right, quote unquote, because it has to be able to sort of match up to what our visions are of the movie.
Yeah, so we worked really closely with Pixar on this, and I don't know if you know, but this is kind of a full circle moment. Pixar actually sent a team of their artists out here for the 2018 film, The Incredibles 2, and they were inspired by the Palm Springs region and the mid-century modern architecture when coming up with the design of the home. So when we were trying to brainstorm of like, what are we gonna do with the clubhouse here, and how could we make this multi-purpose venue come to life? It's like, what's something only Disney can do? It's make the home from The Incredibles 2. So it was like, oh, we already had a team come out and spend so much time bringing this to life. Let's see if we can like leverage some of that. So we met with the team that helped put it together, and then we learned all these things. Like the home itself is this mid-century modern marvel. It's kind of like a caricature of a mid-century modern home. It's like in animation, a lot of things are exaggerated like beyond belief. And when the team was approaching the design of the home, the Pixar team, it was like, well, we don't have to make it buildable, we just have to make it believable. And then when we started working on it, we're like, okay, now we have to make it buildable and believable. Yeah. So it was really, really fun to try to like figure out how we were going to bring this to life and have it like perform a very unique function for the club. And it also is really it's a really cool project because Pixar was able to give us so many assets. So like the cereal boxes we were just talking about in the kitchen, it's like literally the exact same assets they used in the movie that we were able to like reproduce. So
yeah, because you have to sort of make it authentically mid-century modern and a little bit of the Pixar look and feel and squash and stretch and sort of the, suspending our disbelief a little bit, while also making it modern and upscale and fitting into the theming and the storytelling of Cotino as a whole.
Yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah.
Which has to be a challenge, I imagine, right?
And I think, one of the things that I like to talk about is the color and the finishes throughout the home, because, in the Incredibles 2 universe, everything's really contrasted and saturated. It's concentrated color, and there is texture there, but it's a computer-generated film, and it's beautiful for what it is, but it's bringing it to life is definitely a challenge. I think that we were successful and able to bring it to life with the use of texture. Like the texture mix is pretty big here, and it's also iconically mid-century, the texture and the feel of fabrics, but as well as like the color mix. We wanted all the colors to to sort of be complementary to each other and not so contrasted as they are in the film. You know, violets, purples are really intense, and the reds and the yellows are very intense. So I think that we achieved a subtle splash of color throughout, and it gives nods to the film, but it's generally a relaxing environment, and it's a great canvas for any event or just a chill and watch a movie, you know, night.
I've only just seen, as soon as I walked in, I've only just seen a very small amount of the first floor, but my instant thought was, okay, somebody inherited like their grandmother's house, it was missing, and had to sort of modernize it for, 2025, but also paying tribute to, a film that you love so much. So
Doesn't it, I mean, to me, I don't know, I feel like this home has been here
yeah,
for a very
exactly.
long
That's
time.
what I mean. Yeah.
And I think that's, a testament of great work, great teamwork, and great collaboration. It just feels natural.
Like the rocks would have been something that they would have thought was really cool back in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
All you need, you sort of almost have the sunken living room to a certain degree too.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And those are the sort of decisions we have to make when bringing it to life. Is they had that sunken sofa in the movie, and it's like that for us wasn't working. That's not what we wanted to do with this space. So it's like, how do we pay a nod to that and be inspired by it without having to actually replicate it exactly as it was shown in the film? So I think we had to make these everything you have to go through and decide what's a must-have versus
What's a nice to have?
yeah, and I think I think we got the blend right, but you can tell us what you think.
The furniture looks like it's been here for 64, a long time.
All the furniture in here is custom.
Wow.
So
Yes.
I'm very excited to have that, and it was done remote, in Southern California, so locally, which I think is really, really nice.
Even I just noticed the bar stools look like it's something that could fit Mr. Incredible, but it also looks like something that I would have seen, in a relative's house. And I love sort of the mustardy, taupey cabinet, which is sort of in stark contrast with the turquoise appliances, again, which look like they've been here all the time.
We were really lucky to be able to source some of that vintage looking appliances. They are modern too, so they're not going to work like mid-century appliances. They're gonna do a really great job. But I'm happy that you pointed out the yellow in there. It was just as we did with every color in here. I feel like we really. I probably had 10 chips of yellow laminate to just go off of the color tones that were provided from Pixar, and we found the perfect one, and it was. I feel like we nailed it.
Yeah, I walked in and I got the same feeling I got, and this is meant to be the highest compliment. When I walked into Cars Land for the very first time, and I was like, I'm stepping into the movie. I walked in here and I feel like I stepped into The Incredibles too, which now I have to watch tonight. Yeah. So I was there. I was in the living room.
Yeah, thank you.
This is beautiful work.
Right now.
Yeah, it's playing right now.
It is beautiful work.
Thank you.
Have you been to any of the other rooms yet?
Not yet.
Just
You were
this
my
one?
first stop.
Okay.
What's the last question? Yeah. What is the one because it's all about story. It's all we come back to Disney because it's the way it makes us feel. What do you want guests to feel when they step into this space?
Ooh, so in the movie, I don't know how well you remember, but it's when they pull in, the home itself looks like a one-story ranch when they first get there, and then Dash and the family kind of throw the doors open and run in, and then they descend into this flight of stairs, and it's this big expanse of glass and this view out, and that's something I think we were trying to pull off here, and so it's that same thing when you get on, when you're entering from that side of the house, it's actually very. It looks very understated, It's not supposed to be a real punchy facade, and then you open up the doors, and then we actually have this 3 steps you go down, and then it all of a sudden opens up. So it's playing with this compression and release that the film uses, and I think that's what I want people to feel when they get here. They're not really sure what to expect. They throw those doors open, and then the steps kind of invite them in, and then they get to really see the scale of this room, and because I think the scale is really effective.
It reminds me of walking into Magic Kingdom in Walt Disney World, and you don't see the castle, but you turn the corner and you get that reveal moment. That last step is that big reveal moment.
Yeah, that's cool.
100%. I completely agree with you. I think we've been giving tours of Par House for a little over a week now, with different groups and different members locally, and with Disney as well. And what's exciting is I just love opening the door, and I've heard so many people just gasp when they see it, and it's just every gasp is like a pat on the back.
Well, I thank you for the first wow moment. I'm going to continue to tour around. 'Cause I think
Yeah,
we'll
make
get
sure you
more.
go upstairs.
Absolutely.
Yes, get some
Yeah.
cool views up there.
There's some great shots from that.
And so this is part of this is the Artisan Club, which, I think differs. It's funny because we've been trying to sort of draw parallels to how does Cotino compare and contrast with different things. The Artisan Club is almost like a country club membership that you have, and this club is meant to sort of be like this creative oasis. And I think this is where Disney starts to lean into it, wanting to create a sense of community, not just build homes, right? They want to lean into architecture and literature and movement and things like that. And so, for example, there's two different dining venues here. One of them is Architect's Fork, say it 3 times fast, which I loved. First of all, the views of the bay were incredible. The food was amazing. But this really honors, again, in such a subtle way, the like design and Imagineering and the planning and the process. Like that, there's a massive chandelier, which almost doesn't even look like a chandelier. It almost looks like a cloud, which they explained is shaped like a topographic model of the local San Jacinto Mountains with all the little hiking trails. And if you look at the walls, there's WDI concept art and blueprints for classic attractions. Like that is the subtlety that we were talking about that's not in your face Disney, but if you were a Disney fan, you know very clearly what those things are. Even those chandeliers made out of the pencils that architects and Imagineers use.
Yeah, and that was one of my favorite spaces also that we got to experience, mainly because you walk in and it has a very polished feel. Like, to me, it was actually one of the most Palm Springs area feeling venues we went into. I mean, all of them were in some regards, but this one stood out to me just because it had the view, it had the tables and the chairs, and everything just felt right for the story that was being told. And then you could spend, I don't know how much time, you could spend hours probably going through and looking at the wallpaper, at the pencils, that chandelier was incredible, or just sitting at the bar and enjoying watching the world go by and seeing that beautiful view of the bay. And this was one of the things that also kept popping into my head as we were going around is this is gorgeous now. Wait till it gets to a year from now, 5 years from now. Because this is one of those things where homes and communities are meant to be lived in. And I think this is one of those things, Walt Disney talks about when Disneyland started, it's only going to get better as time goes on because the trees will keep growing and all of that. And I had that quote popping into my head as we were looking at this because I'm like, this is brand new. They just are opening it basically that day. And imagine what it's going to look like when there's trees in that park or whatever it is on the far side of the bay, and you've got the little village town, the stores and the shops there finished, and you could see the level of beauty already in the restaurant and then the views that it sees, and then you could also see where it was going to go. And then that was complemented by the food and the experience we got with the service, which this was all run by Disney cast members, and the service was exemplary. The food was delicious. I'm still thinking about the bacon wrapped date. I
wanted more because I knew this was probably the last time I was ever going to be able to have it.
I'm like, unless we find somebody that wants to take us there that lives there someday, maybe we'll get lucky. But like, there were a couple of bites that I was just like, oh, I could take a whole plate of these, and I'm going to sleep the rest of the day. But they're delicious, and then the environment was just gorgeous. Like inside the room, also, like you could have taken that and put it somewhere else, and it still would have been a very lovely restaurant. And the fact that it was where it was at, I thought was fantastic. I also liked that I'm sure it was intentional. You could see, looking out the side, you could see the bay, you could see the lawn for the par house. But if you really wanted to see the par house, you had to go outside either on the deck or look around the corner. And I think that was intentional. And that was just one of those other little Disney details that I thought was brilliant. Another thing I really liked, and you might have to go with me here, is if actually you did, if you made the trek to the restroom, which was right by the front door, they had some really good concept art. And one of the favorite was the House of the Future, right before you chose if you're going to go into male or female. And I loved that detail. And in fact, I came back from the restroom and two cast members walked up to me and they're like, "Did you notice the concept art?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love the House of the Future one in particular." And they're like, "Oh, good. A lot of people aren't seeing it." And I was like, I don't know, maybe whatever. But no, I really enjoyed that. And I would love to go back, and especially knowing that they're going to change the menu seasonally. And that's also one of those places where they're going to interact with the people that are visiting and living there, visiting the restaurant, but living in the community. And that will be a part of the process of building this artisan club. And I think that's really cool as well.
Well, I think the fact that you had that conversation with cast members speaks volumes, because it is not about it being so overtly Disney, because it is this reproduction of what looks like a piece of concept art, right? It's very muted tones, like even, not that I was taking pictures in the men's room, but fine. Like, original concept art. I was the only one in there, I promise, but of the contemporary. And as you go through some of the other areas, you might not, unless you're staring at the wallpaper, you don't see that it's blueprints for It's a Small World or Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. I think that carries over into it really may be one of my favorite spaces. I need to go back again to really find out, which is Plot Twist. And Plot Twist, again, all about story, right? So even this is Architect's Fork. It's all about design and creation. Plot Twist is about storytelling. This is the beach bar and patio lounge. And it really doesn't just celebrate storytelling, but more importantly, the literature that became Disney films. There are pages and typographical elements referencing Alice in Wonderland and 20,000 Leagues and Treasure Island and the Living Desert. Again, the very, very, very subtle little details. These are not sort of movie posters, but what looks like pages that are hanging out over the bar. These are little winks for fans instead of overt branding. And I think that's part of this whole thing, right? It's those moments that when you first step into it, like when you step foot into the Par House, you feel like you're being on set, right? Or you're staying in a Pixar movie, or you're also walking into a very high-end luxury Palm Springs home. And I think that's the point. I think the storytelling is very elegant. It's very subtle. It's very grown up. And I think it's like, this is what Disney does well. This is like something that Imagineering does well in also dropping in some of these storytelling elements, these tributes, and these little Easter eggs, which are little gifts for the Disney fans that are residents or are visitors there or are part of the community that come in and get to find them.
And don't you love, I don't know if this, I'm sure it was intentional. Everything's intentional. Plot Twist is all about those origin stories. That's what was on the wall. And then they showed like where they kind of recreated like Imagineers circling certain words and then doodling on the stories as well on the walls. And then you had the stories also hanging from the ceiling. But I also found it interesting that it's a cement building and it's a cement bar and it's a very sturdy structure. In fact, it felt to me more sturdy in some ways than anything else we did. And I wondered partially, I was like, this could just be me thinking too much too, is like, it was built out of things that foundations are built out of. And it used the part of the story that's foundational to creating a movie. And I loved that kind of connection, whether it was intentional or not, of like, oh, this feels like a foundational point in the story. And maybe the foundation in the experience is going and meeting with people and enjoying time on the beach, because that's where community is starting to be built. And we even had a mixology class there, and that was one of those moments where we came together as a community of media members and really, got to experience some things that we probably wouldn't have experienced and taste some things that we probably wouldn't have tasted and may not taste again. Who knows? It seemed a little strong for us, but But like, it was interesting, the foundational nature, I felt like, that was kind of carried through all of this. And it wasn't anything they outright said. It was just kind of one of those observations I made as we were touring it, and then later when we came back for the mixology class. And I could spend lots of time down there. Like, that was one of the also. There's no shortage of beautiful views at Cotino, but that was one where you just felt. I'm sure it was still 90-something degrees there, but it felt cooler. Maybe because of the mist, maybe because we're right by the water, but there was something very relaxing and less formal, obviously, than Architect's Fork. Not that Architect's Fork was formal, but it did have a nicer feel to it. And then, you know, having the beach right there with its. Did you hear that the sand was specifically blended and made for, like? Of course it was.
Right. That's right. That's
so
the
the
Disney
next thing
difference, right?
all of us are now reaching down to like, oh, you're right. It isn't hot, and it's comfortable, and you don't get it all in your shoes when you walk on it. Like, it was great. But you have that right there. You have all of the seats that are just outside on the sand next to the water, and then you have the bocce ball court right there too. And I was like, this is such a great hangout place that's foundational from a story perspective, foundational from a community perspective, and I wish we could go back there like every weekend, because I just think it would be, you know, I'd be curious who in our group would be Norm from Cheers, but you know, it'd be fun.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because it was around this moment where the dots started to connect for me. And I realized, because, and we'll talk about this, there's not, as we were walking through, there wasn't the, oh, okay, and the gym is over here. Not at all. Cotino is not just about beautiful architecture, but it really is about Disney creating sort of like a lifestyle platform, because they talk about wellness and lifestyle and daily life very, very intentionally. It is not very much an afterthought, because they look at wellness not just as you going to the gym or doing laps or you know, running on a trail. It's about the physical and emotional and social and creative, and this well-being of mind and body and spirit, and doing something that is multi-generational. It's inclusive on purpose, so that grandparents and parents and kids can all participate in that same activity, whether it is the Encanto dance class, the Moana breath work, or the Incredibles super circuit strength training, or the Villains power sculpt classes. The idea is that everybody can feel like it was made for them. It's not just sort of this generic quote unquote workout. I shudder when I hear that word, but it's wrapping wellness, like everything else, in story. So it's fun and it's emotional and it's repeatable, and it's something that you want to do, and not just do by yourself, but connect with other members of the community as well.
Yeah, it was interesting as we were hearing and seeing all of that and experiencing it, some of us. And one of the things that popped into my head was, this really is something that you could legitimately say is fun for the whole family. Like, there's nothing in it that you're like, oh no, well, you're not going to be able to do this because you're too young, or you're not going to be able to do this because you're too old. And I'm thinking of the Encanto dance workout thing they showed us. And some people actually did. I give them credit.
Not us, to be clear. There's no video of us doing
I was wearing
any sort
a
of
bow tie. What do you expect? But they had workout clothes. They came prepared. But no, as we're going through that, like, they even demonstrated with the team that was leading the dance. Like, they had people of all ages doing it and having a blast doing it. And I could immediately imagine, as a kid, my grandfather, who was in his 80s or 90s, I was like, oh yeah, would he be as smooth with it? Perhaps not, but I could totally imagine him doing it, because nothing was unattainable and everything was very, very easy to connect with and to have fun doing together at whatever level you felt comfortable doing it. And I think that's a really smart thing. I would have loved to have seen, honestly, like one of their art classes, like whatever that looks like, because I do think that would be fascinating also, having seen what they did with some of their other demonstrations. And I could just imagine it being one of those things, like maybe it's grandma and grandpa that live here, and you get to bring your kids and grandkids in and they get to do a thing at the artisan club for, I don't know, painting or something, and they're painting the desert. And I would love to see that environment and I just love to see that experience, because it just sounded like so much fun and wholesome, and very much what you imagine from a family picture of sitting on the porch and in enjoying an afternoon in the desert together, evening in the desert together. And like it really, that's probably the most surprising thing to me about Cotino, was how much effort and thought went into wellness at every level and for every age group. And it's not a 55 plus community. They have that in the North End, but it's not only for that. And even during the opening night, we saw the different ages of people that have already moved in. And that was very cool to me too. Because where I grew up in Minnesota, we interacted with all generations. And sometimes I feel like we get a little bit lost on that. And I think there's so much, I want to say variety is the spice of life, but it really does add so much to the experience in the community when you have, somebody that's been through life doing something right along somebody who's just starting out. And I think both sides bring something to that experience and relationship that adds to both. And I think they're creating an environment where you really can come in. And can you imagine doing the Disneyland trip from the Artisan Club? Like, where you go in, you have the show director talk about, paint the night or something. And then you get to go with neighbor Joe and whoever, and you go on a bus and you go to Disneyland and you get to experience these things together with your local community that's all ages. And I just think that's such a fun and fulfilling thing that really adds to the heart component that, I don't know that a lot of businesses think about that all the time when they're like, oh, we're going to build a housing complex in wherever. And there's been great care put into all of this. And that was the intentionality behind everything we experienced last week, and the guests that are experiencing it today was very evident. And I really was impressed and appreciated that.
Well, I'm impressed and really appreciate how you not so subtly are dropping in enough hints to really make sure people know that you want to go back if someone will invite you there.
I think we both need to, don't we?
I mean, I'm just hoping that you'll take me if you get the invitation.
Absolutely.
And two,
you're first on the list.
there is no kids club, right? There is no kids club. The idea is that it is about connection. It is about being multi-generational. It is about people doing these things together multi-generationally. Not just in the Artisan Club and the studios, but even Cotino Bay, right? We keep talking about Cotino Bay, and I've posted videos. I have more videos coming out. I know you do as well. It is about the size of 80 Olympic swimming pools using this crystal lagoon. It's massive. And you can see to the bottom, it does. It looks like it's almost this fake blue oasis in the middle, but there's also like pickleball, and there's tennis courts, and there's all these different outdoor recreation spaces. You talked about the 55 and over Long Table Park, which is going to have not just places for people, you don't have to go there and work out all the time. Like, there's shaded green spaces, and there's gathering tables, and something called the Four Winds Park. Again, I love the nod to Rolly Crump's Tower of the Four Winds from the 64 World's Fair. But this has this, and I almost don't want to call it this because it's not, but it doesn't. It has elements of a country club type feel, but this is something very different. And it's something that I think is about bringing people together to form real relationships, not within your own family, but with other people this is trying to develop real, true community with programming that is designed for that in a shared narrative.
And I think that's what's interesting too about it is they're doing that in so many different ways and levels. And this is where it's just starting. And it's only going to get better as more people move into the community and there's more people to engage with and connect with and then connect with different people at different parts of the community. And I think that will be interesting as well. But it's not a country club. I think that's such a important thing to say. For one, you're not going to dance to Encanto at a country club with different outfits on or whatever. But like the level of, it doesn't take itself too seriously. Is that a good way to put it? I think like it is very much a, yes, this is a very high quality, this is very polished, but it's also fun. And I think that's an important thing to remember. And that's a Disney thing. And as you're experiencing the different parts of the community, maybe you're in that 55 plus. There's different opportunities for you to connect. Maybe it's just within your family, but also with your neighbors and with people from around the community. And I also love that the way they've built that is, no, they don't have a town square. No, they don't have that, but they do have the lake or the bay. And I do think in the future that's going to kind of become the place, because I think they say there was a promenade that you could go all the way around the outside of that. And I think that's an interesting thing, because I feel like that's a place where you will end up bumping into people, and it becomes very natural to, oh, we're going to go to this class, or, oh, we're going to go to this restaurant in the new shopping area. And so I think the way they've kind of funneled everything down to that bay builds on that as well. And it'll be, I've said this multiple times to multiple people, I can't wait to see what it looks like and what it feels like, maybe more importantly, when there's more people in it and the development continues, and you have the variable and the excitement of people from Rancho Mirage being able to come in with the day passes, like, and maybe that's how we partially get back in at some point. But but like it'll be, I think this is where it really, as much as we got to know and experience in 2 days last week, there's so much more that's going to grow and evolve with this in the coming weeks, months, and years. And it'll be interesting to see how they learn from, like, Disney is fantastic at analyzing and adjusting also. Like, how does that progress too? Like, there's so many fun things to watch and observe, and if you're living there, experience as this thing grows and matures.
Well, I think too, we keep talking about these spaces and wellness and what it is, and you alluded to this a couple of times. There's also going to be, and this is, again, part of the Disney difference, there's going to be scheduled programming in these spaces from Disney archivists. Becky Klein from the Walt Disney Archives was there. Historians, outside experts from things like Nat Geo, who are going to come and present in some of these places. And I think the idea is not just to create the programming and those Disney touches, but third places, right? It's where you live, where you work, but these third places that you linger and you talk and you build tradition, and these community gathering spots outside of the home and outside of the work, very thoughtfully designed, very community driven commercial areas, as it were. It's are really set out to create environments, I think, that very organically foster some of that social interaction. And I think more importantly, they want to create a sense of belonging for the people who are there, right? And I think there's going to be, people are going to find the places that they go and they hang out, right? The places that you just sort of go over and over again, whether it is, the pool bar or the lounge or some of the programming spaces. And I think it's so important and intentional. Like you said, even things like the sight lines are very, very intentional from where you sit and what you get to see, because every chair, every place that you sit, you could see water or art or conversation. And I think it's very thoughtfully and intentionally and strategically designed that way to make sure this place does not necessarily feel like a country club or a resort, but a place that is home, even if you just moved in.
Yeah, it's helping you find and build your tribe. Like, it's creating that that environment where you don't just live and go to work, but you live at home, I should say, and go to work, which the homes are lovely. You also live in the community. And I think that's something that, especially after the pandemic, became a little bit more challenging. Is I think there was that little bit of fear of interacting too much with people around you or whatever. And I'm glad to see that it's coming back to saying hi to your neighbor and hanging out with your neighbor and randomly stopping by for conversations on the porch. And those are just things that happen naturally as human beings. And then this is like, yes, this happens naturally, but how can we also just help it along a little bit more? And how can we add a little bit of Disney magic to that as well? And they gave us, you know, a list of programming that's coming, and it was fun to watch. I don't remember where we were when they were doing this, but it was fun to watch the people in our group light up for different things. And, you know, like you brought up National Geographic, and one of the groups that are, or the people that are coming in, is a photographer from National Geographic and going to teach how to take photos. And I was just like, oh, I'm on board for that. Like, that sounds like a blast. And other people wanted, you know, maybe it was art, or, you know, I die at the Animation Academy. So that might not be my thing, but I love that they're fostering the environment where you can really pursue your passion with like-minded people. And you know, maybe one person's a lawyer and one person's a teacher and another person is a student, who knows? And I love that they've created an environment, and they're creating the programming to reinforce that environment where all of these different people that have a shared love of Disney at some level or another can come together and share that joy and share that love. And I think that's something that connects probably and resonates to us in particular, just because that's why we do what we do at some level, is we have a love for this thing that really goes back a very long time. And we love to get to share that with other people that have that similar thing, you know, and when you get to do it together and you get that shared experience, it just amplifies everything. And that's something that Disney has somehow figured out how to put into a community now, versus seeing it in a parade or fireworks or the first time meeting Mickey Mouse. And there definitely was that shared sense of happiness. I mean, joy. Like, that's what was coming out of it. And that's not something we always see at media events, even, or when we go to things. You know, we go to lots of D23 things or special archives events that are open for people to sign up to. And generally it's more of a wow, you know, like, oh, that's cool. Like it's a geeking out thing. And I wouldn't say, yes, we geeked out at certain individual things during the 2 days that we were there, but I would say more, we walked away with a real feeling of happiness and joy and togetherness. Like, they fostered the sense of community they're trying to build in Cotino with our media group. We've done, I don't know how many media events through the years. How often do we all get together and take a picture by a sign? Like, and we're like, no, we have to do that. Like, it just doesn't happen. And it's not because we don't want to, it's just because that's not the focal point. Usually the focal point is, this is the story we're covering. We now need to run and cover it as quickly as we possibly can and get it up and not sleep for 4 days. But, which still happened. But because of the environment that they created and the culture that they're creating in this, I think we all walked out by the second night going like, oh, we really need to celebrate this and remember this and get a picture and carry it on with us, because it is so different than what we normally cover.
Well, that photo, to be clear, was also taken immediately after we gathered around one of those communal tables, and we were literally and metaphorically dumping our wallets and purses onto the table to see if we can combine our funds to actually afford to go and purchase one of these as a communal vacation home. And I think it's important that we talk about that aspect of it, because this does obviously come at a price. Look, even the Artisan Club, to be very clear, the Artisan Club is a voluntary paid membership on top of home ownership. And that membership is limited currently, and I think currently is probably the operative word, currently limited to Cotino residents. And there's a core membership, there's extended membership, whether it's for your spouse and kids, and there's an extended membership for multi-generational families that are going to run you, $20,000 in order to get access to the private beach, to the pools, to the courts, to the paddle boarding and kayaking and all the stuff that you can do on the water, the ability to dine at Architect's Fork and Plot Twist, and some of those special events and storytelling dinners, and the overnight access at Parr House if you want to go for a bachelorette party, your daughter's Sweet 16, whatever it might be. So there is it's I think, very intentionally positioned, not like a golf club. It's more about a creativity and lifestyle club. Like, it's Club 33, but every single day. Like, you sort of live in that model every single day. And, you know, there might be a sticker shock value to that. But when we start talking about the homes next and the prices, $20,000, relatively speaking, I'm a podcaster, relatively speaking, for those who are buying a second or third home in Cotino, it is relatively de minimis-ish, right? And I think, go ahead.
Just think about how much people spend on other things. And like out here, my magic key is now closer to $2,000 than it is to what used to be 200. And when you think of the, like, it's not cheap, and it's not something that's ever going to probably be in my budget. But when you think of what it's offering and the distinctiveness of it, it kind of made sense, because if they made it too low, like, I'm sure there was a ton of thought put into this price point, because if it was at a too low of a level, and it was too easy to get in, I don't know that they would get the same cultural return on what they're investing in. And yes, there's the monetary return that they're looking for as well. But I think there's a very intentional choice made of, if we put things at this level, and even the location that they put it in, I think all of that was part of an equation that not only makes this a profitable business, because as we need to remember all the time, Disney is a business and not a public amenity, but they need to make a profitable business, but they also need it to be a profitable community, like, or a successful community. And that's a challenge. Like, that's the harder part. Like, it's not impossible to make money off of a community. What's much harder to do is create a community that's, you know, reaching into that whole, you know, inspiration, creation, and collaboration thing. And that part was the part, I think, even as I've been thinking about it for a week, is that's really intriguing, like, how they're going to make that happen. And part of that is you have to have people buy in enough that they're willing to not just invest the money, but also invest their time and their efforts. And, you know, I remember I used to do youth group events, and we would do lock-ins for free and nobody would show up. But if we put a $5 or a $10 fee on it, which literally we just threw into pizza and soda, everybody would be like, the thing would just, we couldn't get, you know, we didn't have enough space then. And I wonder if there's something to do, or, you know, there's some sort of logic like that happening here as well, where they're like, we need to hit this certain mark financially just to know that people are going to take it, I don't want to say seriously, but take it seriously and really invest in the community, just like we're investing in the community.
And look, this is not, and I understand, you know, I'm sure we've seen, you know, the internet being the internet, and sometimes there is pushback when things like this are announced and figures are attached to it. I think this is different than Golden Oak, where the value proposition is, I live in Walt Disney World, versus here, where I think it's, I live is part of a curated lifestyle, curated creative, I think, lifestyle. And this is not about sort of gating the Disney magic, for lack of it's about allowing Disney, I think, to deliver consistency and standards. And I think the price points here are probably, I'm guessing, might be different than what we might see when it's built in, when the second one is built in the Carolinas. And if this model works, where else this might evolve to. And we'll talk about what the future is going to look like, because it's not just going to be homes that are at this price point. And I think we should sort of talk about the actual homes themselves, like the physical spaces where residents are going to live and connect and make their own story. And I think too, how the builders reflect, because there are multiple builders, reflect Disney's approach to storytelling and design and attention to experience. So right now there are 3 different builders and 3 different collections. There is Shea Homes, which is building the Atelier 2, like a cottage collection. Davidson Communities is building the Canvas, which is sort of a grand collection. And Woodbridge Pacific Group is building, we've seen I think the Westwood 2, which is the estate collection, which are homes that are ranging from about almost 2,275 square feet starting to about 4,200 square feet starting, two-story, very high-end luxury, some of which have private guest suites and very expansive indoor-outdoor living. And look, these homes are going to start in the mid 1 millions, and I think the estate collection starts in the upper 4 millions. That is a certain price point that is going to attract a certain customer, more importantly, a certain resident. And I think it's reflective of both the Storyliving by Disney brand, the build quality, and I think you are in very much a premium location of a premium location. You're in the Rancho Mirage, Coachella Valley, and some of the unique community amenities that are going to be built in there as well.
Absolutely. And when you hear those numbers, especially, I'm from the Midwest originally, like you say the mid millions first as a starting point. And my first thought was like, oh my gosh, like how does anybody do this? But then you start thinking, like, living in Orange County in California here, I'm like, you can't get anything for that. Like that's sadly, like, when you look at the houses that we got to tour, so we toured 3 houses during this media event, and all of them were gorgeous. All of them had more space than most houses I've ever lived in. I might have lived in a farmhouse as a kid that was massive, but the space in each of them there was a lot. And then you look at location. That's a big deal too. And I kind of walked away from it, especially when I started looking around my neighborhood as I'm walking around, is this isn't the end of the world for a California priced house. And like, that was the shocking point to me, was it's actually more reasonable from a California real estate market than I expected it to be. Maybe not so much for being in Rancho Mirage, because I think the further you get away from the beach, the less expensive generally it is. But it really shocked me that was the entry point. And if you really wanted to live that lifestyle, like I have a few friends that were eagerly following along as we were going through our 2 days, and obviously at some point the price point comes up, and I was like, well, they're saying you can start mid 1 millions, and they're like, oh, that's it. And they live a very different lifestyle than I do, and that's
they must have a really good podcast, right?
They have something. But I appreciate that, like, as daunting as that seems to me, and like, that just blows my mind, is for some people that's kind of that's an expectation. And I don't completely, I can't say that I completely resonate, or I don't resonate at all with it, but I don't completely understand it. But I recognize that other people do. And for the people that are going to want to live in this and want to have that lifestyle, and then want to spend the extra money to stay at Par House or go to Disneyland with, 30 of their closest friends, like on a regular basis, like that's kind of the expectation of that's what you get when you go into a community like this that is gated with security, that are the loveliest people you'll ever meet, and is providing that Disney experience with Disney cast members. And while you are moving into a community and you're just buying a house as your entry level, I guess you could say, for Cotino, I would almost think at that point you're also going to just get the Artisan Club as well, because then you're getting the full experience. And it's kind of one of those things I've gone back and forth on in my brain, is you think of that second house we went to, which I think was made by Woodbridge, and it was massive. Like, we had maybe 30 people total, with like cast members in Disney and media members in this tour. And we could have easily had double that there. Like, you started thinking of, like, I started thinking of, do you ever see The Ugly Dachshund? And they have that dinner party in the backyard that just goes horribly wrong. I was like, oh, well, this is way bigger than that house. And, like, you could start imagining how, like, these were kind of the opening seeds of this is how you build community in this bigger Cotino community. Is we've built layouts that you can move around and play with, that really are conducive for community within your home. And I thought there were so many elements in it that were brilliant because they had their definite communal spaces, and then they also had the places that you could get away from the community also if you needed your recharge time, or you needed to go work or record a podcast. Like, I think all of us that have a microphone, we're looking at that second level suite above the garage they called the granny suite, and I was like, oh, that's the coolest thing ever.
That's where I'd be spending most of my time, right?
I was like, I need the rest of the house for this suite, but like, I don't really need the rest of the house because this suite would be plenty. But it really was, like, when you start thinking about the size and the offerings and the pools and the view, all of that stuff, the price is prohibitive, but I don't know that it's unreasonable, even though, it's not for me.
And look, it's not for you. It's not for me. Even collectively, we found out it wasn't for all of us. But the thing it's frustrating sometimes. Look, and I have no horse in the race. Is when these things come up and the internet becomes the internet and people get so angry and so mad. But look, everything is not for everybody, and you can't get mad at Disney for providing elevated experiences, whether it is concierge level on cruise line, whether it's Club 33, whether it's Golden Oak, whether it's, even sometimes when resorts get built. Well, why are you building? I'll never be able to afford those bungalows. You can't, you have to sort of build for a wide spectrum of guests. And you're right. This is a business, and this is a new type of business for Disney that is very much for, a certain type of guests. And I think it's unfair to get mad at Disney or get mad at people who live there because they're able to do that. They're providing something that I think they obviously did their homework on, and is an area that they finally wanted to start dipping their toes in.
And don't you think there's lots of these experiences that, we will never, we'll never live in Cotino, I'm just going to guess. But I'm glad that they exist, because it means that the company is growing and the company is expanding. And as much as there's definitely the FOMO factor on some of these exclusive higher end offerings, I like that they're happening, because think of the other things that come because of them that we get. Maybe it's a new land, maybe it's a new, a cruise ship or something. But it's a good thing for Disney to be offering these, because it means the company's expanding as opposed to retracting. And I think as Disney fans, like in business, you're either going up or down. And if you're going horizontal, that's not a good thing. And eventually you're going to coast in for a landing, good or bad. And I think one of the things that I remember as a Disney fan through the years is there's fewer times I've been more concerned about Disney than when there was the possibility of weakness in the company and a corporate raider coming in and purchasing said company. I go back to 2004 and 2005 in my head, and all of the uncertainty at that time. And it was a celebratory time because we had the 50th coming up, but we also had that is Comcast going to buy Disney and split it up? And so as kind of that, I don't know, historical Disney fan now, and this is going back to us maybe being the old guys in the room, but as I look back at these things, I'm glad that as we move forward, we're getting more of these things that I can't afford and I probably won't experience, just because it means there's going to be more Disney options for me to experience, because there'll be more stability, there'll be more magic that comes out of the things that they've invested in, and that's an okay thing. I think that's a thing that should be celebrated perhaps more than we do. Maybe because we just don't think about it that way too. I don't know.
And I was going to save this for later. I think maybe it's an appropriate time to talk about it now, because I think the question that keeps coming up is, and there's more I want to talk about the structure, the physical buildings themselves too. But I keep getting sort of asked, well, who is Cotino for? Is Cotino for the high-end Disney fan that is looking for a luxury Disney community to live in? Is this for the Club 33 and Golden Oak members that are looking for a second, maybe third home? Or is it for folks that are looking for a high-end luxury experience? Maybe are not necessarily Disney fans, but understand and can appreciate the level of the very high standard, the level of excellence, the exceeding expectation that Disney does very well. I would argue that it's probably a combination of both.
I was, as you were saying that, my answer was like, yes, because all three of those groups are going to love it. And I know people in all of those groups, and they are the ones that pop into my head of like, oh, I could see this person living there. I could see that person living there. And then there's other people that maybe it's not their thing. Like I very much invested into, I would rather live in a smaller space that has, less financial and time investment so that I can spend more time going to Japan or going to France. It's where you place your value for your time, your money, and in your life. And I think there is several groups of people that this is exactly perfect for them. One person I was texting earlier today loves living in the desert. And this is like, oh, I love this environment. We've now added Disney to it. And it looks gorgeous. Sign me up. Like I would, if I were to pick one person that will end up living there someday, that would be the person. Right. And maybe it'll be their first home. Who knows? But it's very much for those three groups. And I think we even met some people randomly as we were walking around that kind of fit into a couple of those groups during the opening night. And I think there is that. I don't think it's supposed to be exclusive. I just think it's this is the offering we have at the price point that we can do it at, and make it equitable both for the company and also for the resident. And the people that value that might not be the loudest people on the internet, but they're showing up and they're saying, hey, I would like this level of house. I would like to either add or detract whatever rooms that they can and make this, Mickey, if you want, you can put a Mickey pool in your backyard. Like you're allowed to do that. But I think those are the people that are showing up for it. And I don't think they're necessarily the loudest people on the internet. And that's fine. But I think that's also where it's a gift from Disney to invite people like us to kind of be the eyes and the ears of this is what this is about. This is who it's for. And I would not be surprised if there's some people that listen to us today that are like, hey, I didn't think this was for me at all, but it's something that, way down the line, this is where I want to retire, or a future version of this is where I would like to retire. And so it becomes part of that financial plan of like, oh, I'm going to put whatever aside every month because someday this is the dream. And there's a lot of powers in dreams. Like when you've really defined your dream and you're pursuing it, quite often it's not a matter of if anymore. It's just a matter of when. And sometimes the when doesn't line up to where we want it to be. But I do think there will be those people that see this and get a better view of it through things like what we've done. And then as people live there and share about it, that it will inspire them to want to live there. And maybe that will add a little bit of a different mix into who does live there.
We were there, the evening that we were there, the second night, was the official grand opening of the Artisan Club. And they had invited a number of people outside this, just our very small media group that was there, including current residents, some of the builders, some of the partners, and some folks who already bought homes and who were living there. And I did not go up to anybody. I wanted to be respectful of their privacy. But some people did come up to us and me individually, or some of us in a small group, and were asking, who we were, or sort of just making conversation. And it was interesting because there was one couple that I talked to that said, we've been looking in this area for more than a decade. We've gone to every community. We just keep coming back. We know this is where we want to be, but it wasn't until we saw Disney come in to say, we walked in, we met with the Disney folks, we looked around like, this is it. This is the place that we were looking for. The flip side of that coin, another couple I met said, we are the world's largest Disney fans. Like we live, eat, breathe, sleep Disney. I know that they were Club 33 members. Like this was something they didn't know that they were waiting for. But as soon as Disney announced it, they knew from their experience with Disney over generations of decades of generations, they knew this is where their second home was going to be. And, when I first heard the term story living, I didn't know what that was going to look like in an actual neighborhood. And then when I saw the model homes, it started to all make sense. And it wasn't, and the thing that was really interesting to me was how each builder interpreted sort of the quote unquote Disney touch a little bit differently. And when I say Disney touch, I don't mean there's a Mickey Mouse room here, there's a Mickey pool here, because there was really none of that. We joked around how one of the builders was like, look, there's a Mickey Mouse cookie jar over there. Ever seen anything like that before? But each builder, and look, we all had sort of relative recency bias until we sort of fell in love with each home for a different reason. Like the Shea homes, the first home felt, relatively speaking, again, sort of the most approachable. It was simple. It was simple.
It had a good vibe.
And it was comfortable. Yeah, like I think which will resonate with a lot of people. It seemed very sort of effortless because it was not incredibly huge. There was something very, very comfortable about it. That second home from Davidson community really lent itself to those open social kitchens and social spaces. Like, I think you may have even said something like this earlier. It almost felt like a little community within the home itself because you all have different places and spaces that you can go. Again, it felt very much like it belonged in that part of California, but still a little bit of distinctly Disney, not because of the storytelling elements, but just the way it was designed. And then that final home from Woodbridge Pacific, that estate collection, really feels like this almost felt like something out of a Disney resort, or even something that could even be like in a Golden Oak. It was very grand. It was very detailed, but still warm. Again, there was private. It was almost sort of like a villa within a villa, like having its own private suite. And I think it's really interesting how Disney's role in ensuring there was consistency in emotion and expertise, but not necessarily about design, if that makes any sense. And I think it's also fascinating to see sort of how Disney has gone from building places we visit to places we live.
And it was, I think, building on what you just said, is Disney clearly, you could feel the Disney touch when you walked into each of those houses. And not just because there was, a Minnie Mouse golf cart in the front yard, but as you walked in, Disney does a very good job of cultivating the emotional experience as you go through something. And you could tell there was thought process put into, when you enter this house, this is what you're going to feel and what you're going to experience. And it was not the same feeling for each house. And like one of the houses, I think it was the second one, there was that massive, massive closet that's bigger than the studio I'm in. And, but you could tell, despite each one being created and built by separate companies, there was that overlaying Disney connection to it. And it wasn't, as you said, there were no hidden Mickeys. There were no paintings, murals on the outside walls or whatever, which you could do. If you lived there, you can decorate the house however you want, but they really set the palette for you to paint on once you've moved in. And really that foundation is built when you've decided that you want to live there and you're picking, which house you want to live and where it's going to be and all of those fun things. But they're really setting the, it's a canvas where you can come in and you can create that, I'll be a little cliche right now, story living experience that is going to be your family's story once you move in, however long that takes. And there were 3 distinct stories that we experienced as we went to these 3 different houses. And it was funny, as we were at the third one, each of us kind of talking about what we resonated with at different houses. And I think there was a little bit of a agreement that like, oh, if we could take this from this house and that from that house, right, which I'm sure people are going to do in the future of like, oh, I like this offering in whatever house. And could we combine, the backyard with the studio above the garage at this house? And I think that's probably the Disney touch in all of this, is creating that. I mean, it's going back to what I started with, the creation, inspiring, and collaborating, is like from the moment you said, hey, I want to live here, you're now a part of that lifestyle and that process and that experience. And I get happy just thinking of all three of those houses as I think about seeing the people interacting with each other in the living room or out on the patio or whatever it was, or geeking out about specific closets or suites. And I think that's going to be really fun to see how that evolves too, just because they're going to, we were talking to one of the, I guess he was a marketing guy from one of the builders, and he was talking about all of the way you can customize each of these houses. And I'm sure the people who are doing whatever that process is to design each house, they're going to start noticing trends of like, oh, well, people really like this in the kitchen. Like, I will say I loved all three kitchens. I had minor notes on each of them, but like I would love to be cooking in any of them every night of the week. I would be totally happy. But there's going to be certain trends and lessons learned as this builds institutional knowledge, that they're going to be like, hey, maybe they like this size of an island in the kitchen, or if you do this with the living room, you can have a better flow. Like I'm sure things that will pop up that become popular and people really like, and that will be interesting to watch evolve as well. But all of that is possible because Disney has created that palette or that canvas where you can really create something that, going back to the Shanghai thing, is distinctly Disney, but maybe also uniquely Lou Mongello or Mr. Daps.
I was speaking to one of the builders, and he basically, I'm paraphrasing, said, look, if you can dream it, we can do it. Like, if you can pay for it, we can. You want the in-law suite on top of this house, we can do it. But I think I think it allows us to see how Disney's influence is beyond sort of the theming and design details. It's about creating spaces where people feel something, whether the feeling that you want is comfort, is it connection, is it inspiration, is it something? And I think each of the builders does that. Like, I think the Shea house, sort of the way I described it was sort of, it's approachable luxury. Again, it's relative, right? We're talking about, figures that are in the seven figures. But from a relative perspective, the Davidson really, I felt, was about that social design. They were designing for flow and community. And I think the Woodbridge, again, houses that are in the mid-4s, is very much about that elevated, almost more private, high-end living. But they all sort of integrate the same thing, right? The views and the flex spaces and the ability to adapt to whatever the homeowner wants. And I know that there's a lot that we're trying to, cover and convey. And I think we've both been sort of creating content, and we'll have more about that too. But I think sort of stepping back a little bit and zooming out, like, what does this mean for the guest, for the person, for the Disney fan that is starting to dream about wanting to live in the magic, as it were? And I think it's important to note too, this is phase one. This is phase one of Storyliving itself. They've already announced another Storyliving community called Asteria in North Carolina, which is also, again, could include thousands of residences. I think they're going to start selling in 2027. This Cotino is going to be building a town center, retail, dining. They already started to announce some of the, for lack of a better term, sort of the operating participants that are going to come in. There's also going to be some public spaces. There's going to be access to a public section of the Cotino Bay beachfront. That's going to open up next year. I sort of envision, we didn't get to go over there, but I sort of envision like a desert version of Disney's Boardwalk meets Disney Springs. So it's not just for residents, but also for locals and guests. And I think by attracting a variety of commercial tenants and businesses, it's going to provide not just residents, but people in the area a lot of different options for socializing and programming and dining and curated art and music and things like that, and allows people who maybe can't afford to live in Cotino, at least in this early phases, the ability to experience Cotino.
Well, I also think the whole region, it will make it even more of a destination than it already is. Because you think of, for the Disney fan in particular, you can go down and kind of have that connection with Walt and just feel what it was like in that area that once inspired him. Then you can spend the day going to Cotino Bay and shopping and dining there. Maybe you stay the night there, and then you spend the next day going over to the Air Museum and seeing Walt's plane. And I love that they're starting to create it's almost another place that kind of becomes a place to connect with Walt. And, as Disney fans, we like to go to these places that are somehow connected with Walt. Maybe it's Walt's barn up in LA, or the Walt Disney Family Museum, or go to Marceline. And this is almost creating another one of those, because it's now creating a place where you're feeling a realization of Walt's dream in perhaps a way he didn't even realize. But there's still that through line of the story of community and creating something better than came before. And also, he had the culture of let's keep polishing and plussing up. And I fully expect that to be happening at Cotino as well. And then also getting to connect with, 15, 20 minutes away as Walt's plane. Like, I think it creates a new destination for Disney fans to go. I also think it's a great thing to see how it connects with the surrounding community, because they definitely aren't just making this isolated thing. They are saying, hey, this is a place that the public is welcome. And that's good for two things, because one, it makes for a healthier community at large, but two, you don't know who's going to come through and spend a day on the bay and decide, hey, you know what? I'm on this side today. Someday I'm going to be on that side. And which is funny, because we were on that side and we all were like, I kind of want to go over to the other side. But grass is always greener, I guess. But I think it'll be interesting, especially with this being the first one, because this is very connected to the environment around it, the community around it, and the story that Walt Disney started in the Palm Springs area decades ago. And when you move over to the East Coast, that's a different story. That's a different environment. That's a different community. And my question mark is like, oh, what does that look, feel? What is that like once it gets to that point? And that's going to be something that's, I think, very interesting. And then if there's more of them, how do they connect with their local communities and their local interests and their local Disney stories? And only time will tell that.
And to that point, as I said, this is phase one. And if you look at the plot map, you see that there are multiple phases of building. We talked about how there's the space for 1,900 plus homes. On that map is also space for condos, right? Which I'm assuming are going to come in at a different price point.
There's a chance.
There's also space for a hotel, right? So again, these can all change. Time will dictate what Cotino is eventually going to continue to evolve into. But what I think Disney is creating is not, and I don't want to use the word just, but not simply a residential community centered around all the things that we've been talking about and storytelling, etc., but they're really potentially creating a destination. Can Cotino eventually evolve to something that is not just for residents, not just for people who are local or visiting Palm Springs, but folks who want to go and maybe have a condo there, maybe go and stay at the hotel there? And if so, is this the first step in a series of footprints that Disney is going to put around the country, potentially around the world, for similar type destinations? I say maybe. And I think potentially history is going to look back on this time, the weekend that we were just there, as a monumental step for the Disney company, going into a very different type of business and business model that I think can and will become not just a single or two places around the country, but something that could be a very, very important and impactful, and I don't just mean financially, part of the Disney company and brand.
Well, I think you're completely right there. And that's assuming that we see happen the picture that was painted for us, and like all of, if it goes on the path that it looks like it's going for, I think the sky's the limit with this, and that will be very interesting to see how that grows and how that changes things. And I was thinking as they were doing the opening ceremony in front of the Parr House that night, like it was beautiful. It was like they had the lights and they had the colors and the glowing things in the water, but it was also very subdued. And it wasn't something that was like fireworks and confetti and big loud, moments. Instead, it was more a connection moment. Like it connected with the people that were in the space, it connected with the community, and then it connected with Disney as well. And I kind of felt like it was one of those moments where Disney's saying, "Hey, we have all of these things that we can do, and we're using all of them to do this now, and this is going to be new." And you're probably going to love it. And to me, it's almost like a Disney's Animal Kingdom when that first was announced and thing came to be, is like, well, what do you mean animals? Like I remember thinking that. I'm like, Disney's gonna have a safari? Why? Like, what do you add to animals? And now it's one of
not a zoo. It's not a zoo.
Right. It's not a zoo. And I think in some ways there's a correlation between those paradigm shifts is where Animal Kingdom kind of redefined both, it's not a zoo and it's not a traditional, Disney theme park, castle park, whatever you want to say. I think this is doing the same thing. It's not a traditional, housing complex. It's not a hotel resort. It's something different that builds off what Disney already does well. And I think it could be foundational for future options for this. If it becomes something that people really want and value and the market demands it, like we could really see a change in how people connect with Disney, because maybe you go to Disneyland or Walt Disney World from, Wisconsin or something once every couple of years, but maybe there's something in Illinois or something that's closer, that has, you can go for a day, you can connect and get your Disney fix, whatever that is, and feel like you're connected in a way that goes beyond watching a movie, connecting on social media and Disney Plus. And I think when you have that kind of connection, it goes deeper than the I don't want to call it passive connection of when we're connected on social media or through movies and all of this stuff, but there's a deeper connection that comes out of that. And I think we experienced that we just got the tiniest taste of what that's like. And I think everybody that experienced it in our group really did walk away feeling they'd felt something special and different. And that's that's an interesting place to be in. And I really hope it's something that people don't listen to the naysayers and really go check it out for yourself. Because it's like all of the things that we cover. It looks one way through a screen and it might look great. It's never as good as if you go and see Fantasmic and sit in the front row and get wet, or World of Color, or whatever it is you want. Like there's something about experiencing it for yourself that I feel like you really have to have that moment before you can really make a good judgment. And I used to tell people like, people when they'd have complaints at Disneyland, I'm like, well, tell you what, I'll walk with you and we'll go sit in town or City Hall for 10 minutes. And then we'll go outside and you can tell me if you still think it's a complaint. And every time, once they'd experienced that space, they're like, yeah, that's not really a complaint. Like, this is a special place. These people are being completely lovely. And in the grander scheme of things, the Disney experience really does kind of cover all of the, imperfections. And it'll be interesting to see how that is translated into the Storyliving, and what does phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4 look like as it grows and hopefully evolves around the country and maybe around the world.
Yeah, and I think this is something that's not just new for Disney fans, but is a new way to create lifelong Disney fans, or maybe even lifelong Disney citizens, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, maybe the next step in sort of what the future of the Disney difference is, not just in how we vacation, but how we live. And one of the things, again, that struck me most about this is it doesn't feel like Disney is just selling houses. They're trying to really design how we gather and relax and celebrate and take care of ourselves and our families and friends. And from Walt's vision of Epcot to Celebration to Golden Oak to Cotino, you can actually see how Disney's sort of asking the same question that Walt did. How do we make like everyday life better? How do we do it through design and storytelling and story living and community? And look, I think whether or not you or I can ever live in a place like this, you can feel Walt's fingerprints on it. His love of that area, his obsession with progress, and I think his belief around bringing people together around the literal and metaphorical table. So we want to hear from you. Like, would you like, I know the answer is yes. Would you like to live in a Disney community like Cotino? Why, or maybe why not? What about Cotino appeals or is intriguing to you? What other questions do you have about Cotino? We will try and get them answered for you. Come be part of the conversation over in the Clubhouse on Facebook at wdwradio.com/clubhouse. Better yet, call the voicemail at 407-900-9391. Tell me how you feel. I will play it on the air. You can share your thoughts and your questions. And then when you're done doing that, please go and visit Mr. Daps. Mr. Daps, first of all, thank you for sharing the Cotino experience with me. I really enjoyed getting to chat with you while we were there, and of course for your time today. Tell people who you are, what you can do, and more importantly, where they can find you.
You can find me everywhere if you look up dapsmagic.com. Like, we're connected everywhere. And then if you're looking for me personally, it's at Mr. Daps for everything. We keep things very simple as best as we can with a name that is a little bit nebulous at times. But for those that don't know, it's Disney and Positive Stuff. That's what DAPS stands for. And but yeah, connect with us. We'd love to connect with you. And sometimes I hop on the Wednesday night things too. They're a lot of fun.
It's the Disney and Positive Stuff is one of the many reasons, top 10 reasons why I dig Mr. Daps and what you do. Thank you again for this. Thank you again for your time today. Hopefully we have a chance. I mean, we probably won't be able to go in halfsies on a house, but maybe we get a chance to go back and visit and see what future expansion and phases look like, and see what storytelling by Disney story living by Disney continues to evolve to. If you could snap your fingers right now and just put yourself anywhere in Cotino just for an hour, where would you go?
I would go back to the beach bar, but I would like to combine it with the bacon covered dates.
I was gonna say, if you can combine that with snaps and the misting fans, and
they do serve stuff, but yeah.
My idea to allow us,
did they?
My idea to allow us to go back, and I said, look, to really convey what the story living experience is like, let me live in a house for a couple of months. I don't think that idea actually flew.
That may not fly, but I bet we could pitch a part 2 of our Cotino coverage and be like, hey, we'd like to do a live podcast from the Parr House. And you never know.
I like how you're thinking.